No. It looks like it has. Oh, that's dog treat. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Dorie. Name and then a second name tag for you.
Sunny.
It says Jane panelist.
Oh.
Yes,
Okay.
perfect.
The girls are serving me
So
well.
give me one more, and then I'm through with that.
Oh.
Thank you. I didn't. I'm sorry.
One
When
Mr.
you
Levitt.
start, you just.
Okay, thank you everyone for your patience. So we can get started. Kaylee's gonna kick you off.
Oh,
Not really.
fully.
Kaylee's gonna start.
Okay.
Okay, then we need.
Oh, you're Kaylee.
I am Kaylee.
I'm Dorie. Hi,
Nice
Kaylee.
to meet. I think I have. I don't know. Is this working?
Oh, you have one.
I mean,
Okay.
is it? I don't know.
For you.
Yeah, I
Either
assume
that
so.
or it doesn't
Which
matter.
will.
Do you need the-
That's
do you
all
need
right.
the
We know who was has.
Oh
one.
no, I need this. Yeah.
How was the run? I wasn't there. It was great. Sweatiest part?
Whole thing.
It's like unexcusably hard right now.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Any interest?
I would love to know a little overview too. What you did. But you all know Kaylee. Do you all know Kaylee?
Now I
We
do.
do now.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. My name tag fell off because it was sweaty.
Yeah,
So.
that happens. I normally don't get
Yeah.
name tags until the end, but I was like, no, this time let's try it.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
proved that sometimes doesn't work.
Not always.
Great.
All right.
Well, Kaylee will be leading our panel.
Okay, so you already know me. Immediately to my left, we have Benita Greenfield. She is a former Jane, retired attorney who worked in legal publishing rather than in practice. She now volunteers at a local animal shelter. She is with the abortion counseling service called Jane from the time she moved to Chicago from San Francisco in 1969. As a member of the group, she counseled women who wanted an abortion, worked at fronts and places, and worked as the person returning the calls and scheduling visits, aka Callback Jane, if you read the nonfiction.
And we refer to the positions as Big Jane and Little Jane.
Big Jane and Little Jane.
And I did both of those jobs at various times. So thank you.
She frequently drove women back and forth to and from both places. All right.
Can I pause real quick?
Yeah.
If anybody wants us to ask the panelists to use a mic at any point, I have one. So just please be vocal.
Yeah.
If you can. Sure.
Okay. In the center, we have Scout Bratt. Scout, they, them, is the Outreach and Education Director at Chicago Women's Health Center and provides queer, inclusive, gender expansive, comprehensive sexual health education in Chicago public schools, community-based organizations, and area universities. As part of a feminist health center, CWHC's sexual health programming is rooted in frameworks of reproductive justice and harm reduction and works with 4th through 12th graders, college-age students, adult allies, and adult community members. Scout focuses on popular education as key to building healthy, engaged communities and enjoys dancing in their free time.
Very good.
Same. All right. And then far left, we have Dorie. Is it Barren?
Yes.
Okay. Dorie Barren. Dorie, she, her, has been a political animal for 50 years. I love that term. She is a retired Cook County Department of Public Health senior health educator and materials designer for 22 years. She misses that terribly. She also owned her own public relations firm, volunteered with Jane for several years, including referrals for abortion counseling, adoption choices, medical monitoring of pregnancies, and performing pregnancy tests to local residents.
Very good. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for making the time to be here.
Thank you.
Right? Super exciting. Okay, so what was that?
It's our pleasure.
It's your pleasure. Well, thank you. It's probably more my pleasure because I feel like you guys are celebrities. You are. You're local celebrities, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
I certainly don't feel like that. I keep forgetting.
Okay. So I want to know, for both of the Janes, how did you first find out about Jane?
You want to go first, Benita?
Sure.
Give it to
Let
her.
me have
You
it.
can
Yeah,
hold it,
that-
yeah.
I think that's better. Um, it says when I came back from California, but it's when I came back. I lived in California for a few years, but not for very long. Has always basically been my home, even if I don't live here now. When I came back from that life, Jane was already in existence, and my sister Ruth was one of the main founders of the abortion counseling service, and we did not refer to ourselves as Jane. Jane was the name of the person who answered the phone, and and the name of whoever happened to call back. But we were the abortion counseling service of the Chicago Women's Union. Um, but my sister was working with it, doing all the stuff and being a primary person there. And I figured, hey, this is important stuff. I would do it too, And so I got involved doing all the things, all the parts of counseling of the service that we did. When the bust happened, I was not I wasn't busted, but at that point I had been starting to learn how to do the procedure myself. But when we got busted, things changed.
Yes.
Really, a lot. We didn't stop, but we didn't do much training. And so I was involved with it that way. We had lots of meetings. We'd meet. I don't know if probably weekly, maybe I don't even remember. We thought of ourselves as a group that ran by consensus, but of course we had leaders, and so when your leaders say this is the right thing to do, the consensus is the same. It was an incredibly important part of my life, and the people almost all the people I'm closest to, even though I don't live in the same area, they're the people who I am still closest to, and we're talking 50 years later. They're very important in my life, and they always will be, as you people all are, because you're supporting what we tried to do and then got undone a couple of years ago. I'm going to give it to you, Dorie.
Sure. Okay, good morning. How I came to Jane was not very pleasant because I had gone to them for an abortion. Have any of you seen the film? Oh, you've seen it. All right. Well, I'm in the beginning that when I found out I was pregnant the first time. Unfortunately, I had two pregnancies that I ended in an abortion. So the first one was done, as you could see in the movie, was done by the mob. It was a nightmare, but I didn't know any better. I had a small child and a disabled mother at home, so having another baby, this is interesting. When people say, "How do you feel about abortion?" I think there's merit on both sides because I used to think I was very much against it. That's the way I was raised. But there's merit on both sides, which is why it's so controversial. Anyway, so the next time I found myself pregnant, and then I had heard about Jane. There's a Chicago newspaper called the Chicago Reader. I think you all know the Reader. Jane always was in there with the phone number, and the cops always knew about them. So a lot of people didn't know. The cops knew.
We were pretty well protected.
Yes, and so people just stayed to mind their own business. Anyway, so when I had the abortion, because of my experience as a youngster with women, which was not pleasant, I didn't know that women could care that much. I didn't know the word sisterhood. When I got that abortion, I was in shock from the kindness, the concern, the information, the follow-up, the organization. I was blown away. It changed my thinking about myself, the world, and women. So I called them after and said, "Can I do something?" And that's when they told me that they were bombarded with phone calls, and they needed some kind of something like a phone bank to try, because they didn't, people were calling them and they were trying to make plans to help women. So I got a hold of a couple of women that I knew were, same-minded, and we was in Hyde Park, and we went around to the churches and asked who can donate a room. It was a charity organization for women's health. That's as far as we went. And one of the churches, a lot of churches, they'll give you a room if you need it. They're very community minded. So we had a room once it was once a week during the summer from 9 to 12, and we did pregnancy testing. So all the women that called, our people answered the phone, and then they referred them to us to come get a pregnancy test, find out what their options were. It was certainly not just abortion. It was adoption counseling. If you wanted to keep your child, let you know that there was all sorts of wonderful agencies out there to support you. So we wanted the women to be informed as much as possible. And that was, I'm telling you, it was so rewarding, because when I worked as a health department, as a health educator, I remembered how much women did not know about their bodies. I mean, I was blown away. They believed the stupid remarks. They didn't know what to believe. A lot of them, their mothers didn't talk to them because their mothers didn't know how to say it. No fault there. It just, that's what happens. But it was a wonderful experience. I met some of the women. Now you just gave me hold on. I'm sorry. I'm holding it in my hand. I just want you to know that you just gave me a wonderful shock.
Which is like,
Your sister,
oh, you didn't know that Ruth was my sister?
Ruth Sergel?
Yeah.
My heart. Ruth Sergel was one of the most incredible women I have ever met. Now, there's two of the women that you saw in the movie that we have lost, and Ruth was one of them. The rest of us are spread all over the country, and we have a newsletter that we just keep private to ourselves, and we keep in touch. I email her all the time. I never met her. I got her.
In the documentary, they talk about, Dorie was interviewed, and and had all the stuff, and I'm going, Dorie, Dorie, and it's because you did other things. And how far before the bust were you involved?
About 2 years. Oh,
I'm sorry.
No. It was
All right.
it was about 2 years. By the way, if you know how the bust happened, the reader did a great coverage of it. And what had happened was a woman went there for abortion. Her sister or her sister-in-law, somebody knew about it, and the more she thought about it, the more she got upset, and she called the police. Because all of a sudden she said, I can't have her doing this. So the police show up at the apartment, they knock on the door, they let him in, and the first thing that the police say is, where's the doctor? We heard there was abortions going. Where's the doctor? Of course, there was no doctor there at all. Anyway, one of the women got out the back door, but the rest were inside. That was the abortion 7. And then they were prosecuted and then, of course, New York saved the day, because when abortion became legal in New York, the case was dropped and everything was well. But it was a very difficult time.
The case was not dropped until Roe v. Wade.
Oh, was it?
Oh, absolutely not.
I didn't know that.
In fact, when New York passed the law making abortions legal, the abortion counseling service ran into a problem, because we had been treating people from all classes. And once we had New York possible, people who had money went to New York and got abortions there. And so the counseling service was working with a much poorer community, which meant that there was no way on earth people could afford the same amount of money and we had always been we would like this, but give us what you can. And that became a harder kind of thing to do, but we had to do it, so we did it. And the reason the attorney for the women knew that there was a case in front of the Supreme Court, and she had, of course, as people who are in the know in those kinds of things, was aware of what was going to happen, and so she kept making all kinds of requests at court to put it off until Roe v. Wade came out. And when the decision came down, the attorney, the state stopped it.
All that time.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was open all that time. But anyway, it seems like a long time ago, but I do have major memories that are very strong. And I learned so much. Let me just tell you about how great Jane was. If any of you have ever had an abortion, not by professional people, there's a big chance of you getting an infection. That's normal. When Jane was finished, They took our phone numbers and they gave us antibiotics. If you think you have an infection, please take it. Call your doctor. I got phone calls at least for once or twice a week as a follow-up. Are you okay? The syndicate wouldn't do that. So I was so impressed, and I learned the word sisterhood, and I learned that, women are not my enemies, and women can care about other women. So that was the greatest thing that I got from working with these women, dynamos, all of them.
I just want to add and say the piece about people who had enough wealth to go and fly to New York could do so. Same thing today, right?
Absolutely.
Totally, which is why abortion funds, practical abortion funds, all of them are so crucial. And then the other piece that you're talking about, which is like, I work at Chicago Women's Health Center, which was born out of Emma Goldman's Women's Health Center, which was born out of the Jane Abortion Network. We still do that today. That's sort of like before, during, and after any type of care, there's an intentionality around like, how are you doing? What are your priorities? What are your goals for your healthcare? This is not just responsive. This is not just like fixing the symptoms. It's actually getting and working with people about how to fit their healthcare goals into their lives so that after you leave an appointment, someone's going to follow up with you because your health doesn't end when you leave the appointment. Our investment in community care doesn't end at the hour, right? So I think that's what we've learned from Jane, is it being like about being part of community care.
I would like, in talking about the Emma Goldman Women's Health Center, which I was part of because that's what happened right after we dissolved, and probably a little before. We did self-exams so that we were telling women how to observe their own bodies by, giving them, we use mirrors as well as scapulas that we'd use plastic ones. It was really not comfortable. I expect all of you women know that. I expect you guys don't. But it was really fascinating to watch us change, to see what women were able to do for themselves, to keep themselves.
I will say we will run self-exam workshops at the health center to this day. When you come to the health center, we support people in inserting their own speculum and using a mirror to see. And in 2024, it's from y'all. In 2024, people are, not everyone wants to do it, but when people do, it is like a revelation.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And if you've never done it, you should do it just to see what you look like, because it's really fascinating. And one of the things I learned over time that I don't think it was related to this is that the body changes daily, so that the cervix will look one way one day, and if you keep following it, looks different another day, so that even when you have tests taken, they won't necessarily show exactly the same thing, because one day it looks very healthy and another day it looks like, oh, maybe not.
I also think part of what I learned about Jane and Emma Goldman was that it was taking, similar to Our Body is Ourselves, the book, the publication, taking our bodies into our own hands, our healthcare into our own hands, that like, no, there's no doctor here. We are the care providers. We are the clients. We are Jane on all sides. And that we take care of ourselves, and that we also like deserve to get space and time to do that and to continue to invest in that. Even today, ever more so today, we need that. And I think it is about like mirror and the flashlight dynamic of like feminist tools of a mirror, a speculum, and a flashlight, which is also the name of Chicago Women's Health Center's podcast. No big deal. Right? Is about saying this has historically been hidden from people. The gown that was used to separate someone's own body from the face, the hands, the eyes of the care provider who is inserting something into your body, it's a power move, right? And so when we take away the gown, when you are able to look at your own body, when you are the one inserting something, or you are able to insert semen for an alternative insemination procedure. You're the one who's able to look at the test results and decipher what that means with your care provider. That is a radical redistribution of power, right? That is what started with Jane.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wanted to just reiterate a little bit. We were talking about the Chicago Women's Health Center. That we had that name in the 70s. That's
Yes.
not an old. That's not a new name. But wait a minute, I forgot what I was.
Takes time.
No, go ahead.
Chicago Women's
I
Health
gotta
Center.
Stop. My
You stop yourself.
getting old is a pain in the butt.
One of the things I think we should do and talk about here, which I think you're probably the best one to do, is talking about where the needs are, what we can do, particularly for women who come from other states or people who in the area who don't have money, that where donations can go to. I mean, there are organizations here and all over that help women find ways to get to the states that they can get an abortion. And of course, Illinois is one of them, as is New York. But it's very expensive, and so there are these, where, when, as you pointed out, people who had money could go to New York, and people who didn't had to deal with us or the kinds of things that you had to deal with, Dorie. Now, because of the how public the fight is, there are organizations that find ways to help women get where they need to go, not only to provide abortions. There are still women around the country who are doing what we did in Jane, and they're hidden because it's very illegal, and it's publicly illegal where it was just not talked about when the service existed. But I think
Yeah,
you're
I
the
wanted
one
to
who
I can share more. And
because you're the most pro. Dorie and I used to do, and Dorie keeps up with the literature and sends it out to us. But you're working on it now, and so I think you have a lot more.
I want to work with you.
yeah, I've learned
But anyway.
on that.
Some of you might remember consciousness raising groups. Remember those? Okay, so the group it was very popular for a while. I thought it was really healthy. You'd get 6 or 8, maybe 10 people together in somebody's living room once a week, or I don't know how often they met, and we would just talk. Well, a number of those women in my consciousness raising group were also helping me with Jade. We were all a team. So then somebody came in and talked about the speculum and looking at your cervix. So we said, oh, okay, whoa, yeah, sure. So we got a flashlight, a speculum, and a mirror, and we each looked inside ourselves. And when it came to me, it was so funny. Somebody said, Dorie, you have a smiling cervix. Okay. So yeah, cervixes do change, but it was such a freeing thing to look inside your body with things that you've heard about. You never knew what they looked like. So that was very, very freeing. So it sounds crazy to look inside your body, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
And
So
doing it that way, you're actually seeing inside your body, other than when things are happening and just the doctors do and stuff like that. And what you do, or at least what I do, is in my head, I see what's going on, and so I follow it. But when you're looking at your cervix, you're really looking at what your body is.
Yeah, really. I mean, I think that other piece of saying, like, what are the ways in which in our world today we are doing things for ourselves, advocating for ourselves, or supporting in a peer-led way access to basic healthcare that we deserve and need. To me, that's what the abortion landscape is all about today, is out of the model of Jane is peer education and peer advocacy. And that includes like doctors as peers working with one another. So there are a couple of organizations here in Chicago I would totally highlight. One of which is the Midwest Access Project, which trains, if folks are familiar, MAP, they train care providers who are not trained in medical school to give abortions. They train, yes, Kaylee knows. Okay, you want to speak to it?
Their About Us literally highlights the fact that so many care providers go to religious-based schools, and there are just aspects that are not included. Even if they are taught gynecological Science is they are not told to do certain things.
Yeah, and that's like they're not allowed to be told that
Yeah.
based off of their school's regulations. You
Yep.
want to share something?
I have a question. So,
Yes.
does that mean that if you go to a medical school in a state like Texas, where abortions are not legal in most contexts, like, are medical students there just not taught
Absolutely.
abortion?
They are not.
Kentucky
They-
also has that problem right now.
What did you just say?
Kentucky.
Kentucky, yeah.
So,
They-
it's a big problem for the
and-
lawyers for the school figuring out
Right.
what they can teach and what they can't.
And even schools that are not religious related in states, and probably not so in states that where abortion is legal, but because the law says they can't do it, the medical schools medical people get very concerned, and so they are not taught.
I will say, like, so I'm an ER doctor, so functionally,
Thank
the
you.
procedure to do, like, procedures to abortion is similar to, so for example, like, a patient comes to my ER, and the baby has already passed, and then the fetal content, for whatever reason, isn't completely passed kind of on its own by the body, which is like a, body's kind of natural process to do that. Sometimes it doesn't happen like that, and they're having, like, he's bleeding, and, we need to step in to take the rest of the fetal content out so the uterus can clamp down and stop the bleeding. So functionally, the procedure to take the fetal products out is similar to abortion. It's functionally the same procedure.
It's the same thing.
So in terms of, like, I wouldn't, again, it's awful, like, don't get me wrong, like, the, concept of, especially like OB-GYN providers not being given the full breadth and of the scope of, what should just be like basic health care for women. I will say they do have, like, some form of knowledge in terms of, like, what to do in this situation. I don't know, and I think it would also include vacuum. Like, did you guys do vacuum, or you just did, like, DNCs?
No DNC that I know.
We did start learning to work with vacuum stuff. Somebody came out from California where it was just starting.
Yeah, because I even think, like, even for, like, those pregnancies where a DNC might not work, those, like, where the baby has passed and, like, they're allowed to, take the fetal contents out, I think they also do vacuum. Again, like, I would have to talk with my gyne provider, like, colleagues and friends.
I would think that would be safer to use vacuum than using it.
If it was that far along.
Yeah, well, because the skin of the uterus would be so much thinner that the vacuum would be safer than going in with.
So I will say, like, caveat is they functionally have procedural training for it, even if it's not branded as, like, oh, you're being taught how to do, like, abortion.
And the only other thing I would add, though, is like that's great and that's a loophole to know about. And having an abortion is different than having to have contents removed because a pregnancy ends. And that piece of, like, wow, so that means that if it's not taught in schools, that's not part of the conversation for care providers. It's not part of the conversation for people who are coming to support folks who are navigating pregnancy in any of those ways, right? Which I think is about, like, abortion companions, that ideally for us, all people in relationship with people in the world have a concept of how to support people before, during, and after pregnancy ending, pregnancy variety of options, pregnancy continuing, and that includes abortion. So abortion companions for us is an attempt to a training we do, an attempt to say, like, what was it that Jane members were doing as peers before, during, and after abortion procedures? How might we need to replicate that today when someone from Indiana might not be able to come and, like, get access to their own in their own home an abortion, might need to travel here, be away from home? How do we support them? What does it mean if someone does get access to via mail abortion pills and then are navigating abortion in their home, right? Or self-managed abortion might be what folks are hearing, because care providers aren't necessarily the ones that we have historically been able to go to, or currently, though some we are, for sure.
Well, and I just asked a friend who went to medical school in Indiana. She said that they got sent across the border to Illinois for that part of their training.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that
At
is,
least it was offered.
Yeah.
super important about the where Illinois is, because we are on the border with so many states that do not have access to abortion, right? So we'll see people coming in, which is also why Midwest Access Project can be crucial, because they can help with that training, right? And we're located in a place that is close to Ohio and Indiana and Missouri, right? Yeah, right on.
Right. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, comments or questions?
Your guys is like kind of getting a history of patients that were coming in terms of like how far along the pregnancy was it just based on lost mental curiosity? You guys didn't have access to all this stuff, right?
That's right. You're right. And of course, when performing an abortion, you don't really know until you're there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking when I was watching the movie. I was like, that is, yeah.
Yeah. I think if you read Laura's book, you're talking about infection and the amount of infection there was with when abortions were being done, and probably is happening again today. Infection was very high. We were so careful that we had one person who we would not take care of because she was clearly infected, and we sent her to the hospital. We did not have any serious infections at all, and we did thousands of abortions. I think we were just so careful. Am I giving this to someone? No. Oh.
No. You're keeping it.
No, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Comments, questions, anything?
Yeah, comments, anything.
I guess it's more of a comment. It seems like the philosophy around how Jane was performing abortions would be useful in a lot of different places in women's healthcare, like even birth. Like some people have terrible
Oh, yeah.
experiences giving
Yeah.
birth. Like,
Right.
does the Chicago Women's Health Center also do that too?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So we do not do prenatal care. Thank you. We used to. We do alternative insemination, so supporting folks in creating pregnancies specifically for people who don't have access to sperm. So we're talking about single people, trans folks, queer couples, not necessarily around fertility. So when talking about like creating pregnancies and helping them navigate or think through what their options are for prenatal care and for birthing care, I really think like birth centers are trying to really uphold that sort of peer-led or peer-based but client-led approach. And the notion that also like it's about as much communication and trust building as possible. And I think outside of the mainstream medical model that allows for more space and time for an appointment, as opposed to I think the urgency-based, rush, insurance-driven state of mainstream medical care. That's one thing I would say. I think the other piece that I would really highlight is healthcare that's focused on access to trans health, specifically hormones. So, if you're a trans person, everything is trans health, right? But in terms of accessing hormones, a lot of that model from the Jane abortion service is what we use in our trans health services, which is about like, again, sitting down and talking with people before, during, and after. What are all their options? Which I really appreciate you both highlighting. It wasn't just access to abortion. It was about testing. It was about adoptions. It was about options and about clients getting enough information that they can make their own informed decisions. So every step along the way, it is about how we navigate power dynamics and flip them, right? So no, I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm going to tell you all the options. Stay, wait, hear your questions, and then ultimately you make the decision about what's going to be best for you.
Right.
Right, which I think is, again, it's about a model that we do not see today. We still don't see today. I'm getting angry. That's it.
I'm remembering things, so I'm going to bring them up. I forgot what I was going to say.
Take your time.
You go ahead. I'll remember.
I agree with everything that Scout is saying, and I think I would also like to mention that we need more doulas around, and doulas they can help even when you're not just focusing on yourself. You have someone who really is there for you, and is probably your peer. And I just we don't have enough doulas in the world.
I just want to throw this out there. You said the magic word doula, and
and I worked my way through college as an abortion doula in Florida in the 80s and 90s, and I'm an end of
You
life.
need to be up here with us.
You're an end of life doula.
Wow.
I'm an end of life doula.
I have just heard.
now.
Yeah.
And I think that there is, I love to donate money when I can, but I feel like there's a lot of us who have these skills that we would like to help, especially women who are coming, or pregnant people who are coming from out of state. And I have put my number into a couple of places and I haven't heard back, and I know they're swamped, but I think that there's so many of us that have skills and we want to contribute in some way. So before we leave, if somebody could just speak to like collecting our names and phone numbers,
Great.
because we do want to be more involved.
Okay, I thank you. I mean, I have only recently read about I was giving it to you, about end of life doulas and going, oh wow, it's really wonderful. So thank you.
You can learn from her.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
I think that the end of life component also is, and specifically menopause as well. Not that that's end of life. I'm so sorry. What I meant, it's not end of life. But what I mean is, what I want for us to be mindful of at the health center is like, oh, and actually we stop sometimes at birth, right? When we think about women's health, or the idea that we actually need continuous peer-focused, collaborative care throughout one's life, that actually I primarily orient as a sex educator. And end-of-life care, menopause care, the way we talk about puberty, menopause, birthing, abortion, end of life is all connected. And the way that we imbue ageism into our healthcare settings, our healthcare world is showing up. And that's why we need end of life doula and doula approaches for all stages of life. That's what you're saying.
Support.
I just wanted to say she's gone. All right. That's right. But anyway, she was mentioning about how far along can you be for a safe abortion, safe in quotes. But anyway, when I did that first abortion with those horrible people, I was almost 5 months pregnant. I didn't know it at the time because I was in my early 20s and I just knew I was pregnant. I didn't know how to measure it. I mean, when you're 22 and 23 years old, and I came from an intelligent family, but I knew nothing about my body. But anyway, so what they did, they came in, they put a clamp on inside your uterus, and then you start to abort. And then they told you, just go sit on the toilet, and they left. So, and I was there with another young woman, and we were both finished and we were bleeding, we both got a cab and went home because that was all we knew to do. That's all we knew to do. All right. Anyway, when I got home, of course, I was bleeding. Had to go to the hospital the next day and get a proper D&C. But that's how the mob did it. They just clamp onto the uterus so that you go into labor, and they left. They didn't care about you at all. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to tell you about is, now I forgot again.
Well, I think what you're describing, thank you for sharing, and apologies if this is flip, is Dirty Dancing is a abortion movie. Like,
It certainly is.
100%. Like,
Yes.
and that's what that movie is all about. If you're paying attention to the movie.
I gotta watch that again.
Great dancing. Right. And that idea, I think, also of people who want to support, people who are interested, who have the skills, which I'm like, oh, you mean someone who's going to listen, who's going to think about resources, who's going to be an advocate for what you want and you need. One, we can teach those skills for sure. We want to teach you those skills. Two, I definitely will get your contact information. There are organizations that, like Chicago Abortion Fund, like Midwest Access Coalition, that are based here in the city of Chicago, but also other abortion funds or hotlines in the neighboring states that would also want contacts based in the city of Chicago, right? I will say that the abortion networks that I know of are well connected. Like Hoosier Abortion Fund works very closely with the Midwest Access Coalition, and that being, we are a hub. There's been something like 800% increase since Roe v. Wade was overturned of folks coming to Illinois for accessing abortion, the majority of them coming to Chicago, right? So the need is there. And like I don't want to say bottlenecking, but the like, what are we doing to make sure access is widespread? Folks are thinking really creatively. The other thing I would say, sorry, I'm just like plugging, is the Chicago for Abortion Rights is an organizing effort that's based here that I'd be happy to talk to you about. And they are, again, like people who are trying to figure out how do we spread the word about opportunities to support abortion access being safe and sustained, access being safe right here and sustaining that in this state, and also putting pressure on other states. So just thoughts.
I was gonna say,
Yes.
go ahead.
What? Oh, what?
I just want to be mindful of time. I know
Yes.
some folks need to head out.
Oh, okay.
Soon, but I was gonna ask, are you able to stick around a little longer? We
Sure.
can close out, and then anybody who's able to stay. I know everybody wants to stay, but like I know people have to get going.
Sure.
So is that okay? Real quick, if I do some quick announcements. I don't need to do.
No, go ahead. No, good.
So
Did you remember? No. Okay.
Oh no! Did you remember? And then I said no. Don't.
It's all right. It'll come back.
Oh, no.
Might not be till next week, but I will. Yeah, it'll come back.
Okay. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. You won't hear that like amazing nugget of information. Hopefully you will.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
I wanted to just say like so. You know what we did was like kind of run around. Well, Kaylee guided the runners around Hyde Park through the story of Jane. And so we don't often get to meet the real life people behind the stories. So this was like an incredibly special opportunity for people, and you all have had such a wealth of knowledge about all of these things and connected a lot of things for all of us. I'm gonna wait before I close out though. I want to pose the question, so you might need a time to think about it. So like ignore us while I'm doing my announcements and like think about your answer, because my question that I wanted to end formally like with the group on was like the funniest thing that happened to Jane, because what you get in a lot of the story is like there's some really funny shit in there, like and it was serious and you were doing really important and sometimes dangerous things, but very funny. So I'd love for you to think on that while I give my announcements. Okay, so everybody, thank you so much for spending the time and being here. And Kaylee, you did an amazing months of research and preparation for this. Thank you for guiding us through this story.
Thank you.
Through place and time. And Kaylee has, like I mentioned at the beginning, created a blog post of different, like, the merits of different media and books around this topic. So you should definitely continue your learning. And I know that I can already think right now we're going to put out some more stuff about the resources that were mentioned today. So stay tuned for that. I'll put it in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter, definitely subscribe. freedomrunchicago.com/newsletter. Thank you. Okay, I wanted to talk about two different things. One, our next two events are next week. We have on the 18th, it's a Wednesday, Historic Chicago Bakeries one with our programs manager, Fernanda. You'll be getting bakery treats and learning about history, celebrating Latinx Heritage Month next Wednesday. And then next Saturday, John will be leading a run in Back of the Yards all about stockyards history and that whole very fascinating
We should go if we
world.
can.
Stay tuned for that. You can find out using the QR code that's right over there on the table. Otherwise, I'm going to be sending out an email next week with a post-run survey and with all the photos and videos we took today. So definitely, if you have time, I would love your feedback. We work really hard to make these events, and we want to make them as best as possible. So if you have a moment, we'd love to know what you liked, what you didn't like, etc. I also wanted to make sure you knew that Madison Street Books, Selena from Madison Street Books is back there.
Yay, yay, yay.
Women-owned bookshop in West Loop. Please, if you don't have the books, please grab them, or if you want to grab them for friends. They make great gifts all year round. Doesn't have to be a major holiday. And we have tons of like stickers and buttons and pins. Please take them for your friends, for your coworkers, for whoever. I don't want to leave with them, so please take them. And then finally, we have tons of cookies. If someone has a sweet tooth and wants to take a whole box, do it. Thank you very much. And also, shout out to all of our volunteers. I really, really appreciate all of you taking the time.
Yes.
And Beverly and John and Fernanda, who's our program manager, and volunteering today. Thank you. And I forgot to Kat. If you didn't know it was Kat, look good.
Can I add a really quick addendum?
Yeah.
When- I'm old. And when I was younger, I never heard the word abortion. I didn't even know if I knew that word until I was either late teens or early 20s. We never know that. That was not a word said. Now, what I want you all to think about, and I think about, is the word abortion is all over the news. Our young kids are hearing it. For the family, the kids that belong to a progressive family and they have to go and say, "Mommy, what's an abortion?" You got to think about how do you describe that to a child, especially today's children, who I want them to be enlightened and not frightened. So, and think about the future of our girls that now today they're getting exposed to. A lot of it's very scary, but they're gonna learn things that I didn't know until I was in my 20s. So think about what your definition of abortion is. If a kid came up to you and said, "What's an abortion?" Because the future is our children, and they're getting bombarded with a lot of information, including the orange morons lies, and they don't know who to believe. So just keep remembering that we got to remember not just our young women, but the kids, the boys and the girls who are hearing this word and they don't know what's going on.
So true. Well, I was just gonna say, so before we close out, just and then we'll let you go if you have commitments. But did you think of anything funny?
I don't, but I do have a comment. That is the only thing that I can think of that way. Is that when I would do counseling, many women came with friends and and parents and their boyfriends. I had a dog who was not fond of men.
Oh.
And so we always had this issue of telling Alex that it was really okay, and if he had to, I had to put him away in another room. But that would always be, oh my God. But it's actually on a side. Little dogs, though Alex wasn't one. Little dogs are frequently have trouble with men. I think they're too tall. I think that's got to be. What's your memory?
Oh, well, I can tell you, we found a source on Lamont Street, which was a very far west street. I'm an east side of Chicago. I didn't even know anything about the west side. But anyway, I made my way there because that was a scientific laboratory that made tests for all kinds of things. And, that if you pass the building, you'd never know that was going on there. So I was sent to go pick up the pregnancy tests, which I think we ordered like 50 at a time or something like that. So I remember walking in. Keep in mind, I'm still in my mid-20s, I'm still fairly naive, not as naive as I was, but still. So I go up to the counter and I show the guy the order. He goes and he brings out this big box and he looks at me and he says, "You must know a lot of pregnant people." And all I could do is just smile and pick up the box and leave because I didn't know what to say to that. I was walking out with 50 pregnancy tests. But anyway, that was a learning curve for me. All right. You got one. All right.
Yeah. So what did you do after Jane?
After Jane?
Yeah,
That's
after.
That's a good question. Well, one of the things that what I learned as a result of going to Jane and educating myself and reading our bodies ourselves, I mean, that became a Bible for a lot of women because you couldn't find that information anywhere else. And I went after a job at the Cook County Department of Public Health, which serves all of suburban Cook County. And I became a health educator. And the one thing that I really enjoyed, I just told Scout about it, is that we had a grant about pregnancy and how to teach women how to plan their families. So I did this for 10 years and I cannot tell you how wonderful it was. And it sounds strange because it was a very touchy situation. I went to a men's rehab house in Blue Island once a month for 10 years. I went to a women's rehab at 171st and Dixie Highway, and we talked for about an hour and a half, gave out tons of condoms, and answered their questions. I can tell you this is a perfect example, and it's sad. It's funny, but it's sad. When I would have just like we were told here, if you have questions, just raise your hand. And I was in the middle of giving a presentation about women's bodies, and a woman raised her hand. Mind you, the women that I talked to were all ages, about 25 to 30 women every time, all walks of life, all education levels, the whole bit. So I talked to everybody, fine with me, because I like to talk to everybody. So now a woman raises her hand, and I say, "Sure, okay." And she said, "Can you get pregnant from kissing?"
That's so hard.
This is a grown woman. And of course, everybody laughed. And I said, no funny. There's nothing funny here. Everybody can ask whatever you want. No one's embarrassed. You can ask anything. So it was that stayed in my mind. It's like, how can a woman ask that in this day and age? That just shows you how much ignorance is out there, that women are being kept from information.
And it's also hard when you hear on, like debate stages that you can get an abortion after the 9 months
Oh, that stuff
of
was
pregnancy. Like, whew, which I will say is why sex education is important throughout
absolutely.
life. Yeah.
Yeah,
What about you could?
Okay.
What about this talk about you can reverse an abortion? Have any of you seen that or heard that? That's one of those terrible things that's going around. It's like, well, you can get it back. What?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can't. Just to clarify, not true.
Women have been told after you have an abortion, it can be undone. I'm telling you, that's some of the.
Well, right. If you have an abortion, that will not impact future pregnancies. Maybe that's a positive twist.
That's probably what is meant by it. But
Yeah.
in order to turn people against anything that happens with their body, they'll say it the wrong way. Which is exactly what Orange Face did the other night, talking about abortions after 9 months. Because I just read where it came from. I just saw that this morning, that it came from a change in a law that said care for an infant. If the infant's going to die, just care instead of life and care. Care wasn't the word in the original one, but because with the change in the political climate, there was the fear that life meant that you would have to put all this money into a child who was going to die in some amount of time, rather than just do palliative care. And it was like, at least I found out where it had come from. It's like, how, I mean, he's crazy, but it was just.
Instead of giving life-saving care to prolong the life, it was saying that they could use palliative care.
Do palliative care, keep them comfortable.
That is saying you're killing the babies.
Well, then people dying is killing. I mean, it's that kind of nonsense. Are we ready to let people go?
Yeah, sure. Guys, I could talk all day. Anyway, when I was teaching sexual health at the rehab houses for both men and women, all walks of life, let me tell you something that I learned 20 years ago, 30 years ago, working with poor communities. Just because you're not educated does not mean you're stupid. I met so many people that didn't have any education that were so on top of things. The brain was there. And when we gave parenting classes, we made arrangements when I was at the health department, and I organized it. We went to all the churches and said, we have parenting classes. We did it for something like 10 weeks. These women, no education, not even working poor. Some of these people, they lived on food stamps. They struggled every day to take care of their kids. Constant. I mean, it was just a constant in their lives.
You were going to say that one of the things you discovered with these women is that they learned and they cared and they followed.
They fought. But what happened was, yes, thank you. When we stopped after the 10 weeks of the parenting classes, I got phone calls from these women. Why did you stop?
Yeah.
Where is it next? These are poor women, uneducated women, but they know what they need for their families. And they try to take advantage of what agencies offer to them, even though most of them don't even know what's out there, unfortunately. But it's just amazing. It's just an amazing experience.
And I think what I feel about Jane and our bodies ourselves is really challenging this notion of who is educated, who knows, and what do we actually mean by education? Are we actually talking about the ivory tower of cis, hetero, white, able-bodied, well-educated men who created the medical textbooks, which in fact does not speak to, through, about, with all their experiences outside of that quite narrow one? That's what I think peer health work is all about. What Jane, Emma Women's Health Center, Chicago Women's Health Center is all about is that we speak about ourselves for ourselves, and we need to create community spaces where people get the power to do that and sustain those community spaces. So it's not people talking over or onto or behalf of, it's speaking from and for oneself.
And tell women that you know, your friends, your family, your neighborhood, tell them about the services that are available, because word will spread and it'll eventually hit a couple of women that had no idea what existed and they needed help. So we need to, just spread the word, keep talking about what's available out there, and there's nothing we can't talk about. We can talk about everything.
We should let people thank you for being here and listening
Yes,
to
thank
us.
you so much for
And
coming today.
and I hope you don't feel like we're holding you in because we keep on talking. We always have more to say. But feel free to leave if you need to get somewhere or if you want to get somewhere and away from here. While I was dealing with my cough, Scout was talking about Our Bodies Ourselves. And one of the things we did, Our Bodies Ourselves was published originally in newsprint while we were still doing the service, and we gave out copies of it. I don't even know if it's on sale anymore, but I watched it grow bigger and bigger as more information was available. But we gave it away in its original form, as well as the VD handbook and the birth control handbook, which came from the same group from Boston. I think the two handbooks might have come from Canada. But they were little pamphlets, but that was part of the way we helped educate with the limited resources we had. But I'm going to stop and let other people talk. Please talk from among you, your experiences, things that we could share, that we could learn from you.
Yeah.
So I guess since Roe v. Wade was struck down, and obviously Roe v. Wade was already a decision based on privacy rather than women's right to their own knowledge and their own bodies.
And put in a lot of limits that a lot of people would not go along with.
Exactly. So I feel like now it's almost a current fight that's very similar to the previous one before that decision was made. Now we're trying to get women's rights to their bodies and abortion rights enshrined in the Constitution or just in more legislation. Do you have anything that you think people should hear as they're trying to work towards something like that?
I've become very aware because I do send out press releases to the Janes. Like I say, we're spread out all over the country. There's 5 of us, I think, in the Chicagoland area, which I'm glad to say. But anyway,
Anything people should think about or know as they're advocating for the expansion of abortion access?
What can we do to help change the law in more places?
Oh, got it. What I have discovered in reading, because I'm a major, I don't know if you know who Katharine Graham was, but she used to run the Washington Post, and I adored the woman. So I'm a Washington Post fan, and they do have some incredible articles. And the ones that I've been reading about that I know it was out there, but I just never really gave it any thought. And it's the women who find out when they're 2 months pregnant, maybe 3, that they have a horrible, horrible pregnancy. I mean, some of the things that the body can do and not do are amazing. And what these women go through to get a proper abortion, because it means it could hurt their life, take their life, that this child has no chance. It's going to cost a lot of money and time and pain. I had no idea that it was that extensive. So I'd like a lot of people who think abortion is simply ending a pregnancy by a woman who said she couldn't afford having another baby or it just didn't fit in her life. All right? Much more than that. These women have been bleeding to death. They've had women that have tried to get into a hospital, and on the lawn they bled because the hospital wouldn't let them in. And they had serious conditions, horrible things that I didn't even realize could happen in a pregnancy. They've been denied care all over the country because of the abortion laws, and the ones in the states that are even more stronger, boy, they really endorse it. They will leave a woman and not care.
I myself am going to go up and get some of those freebies.
Yeah. I want a cookie, but yeah. To be continued.
Yes.
And come and talk to us.
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I have no idea how it turns off.
That thing? That button?
Okay.
I'm holding it.
Yeah, but it's still green. Oh,